All right, everybody, welcome. It's that time again, Tuesday night. Families gathered. See the familiar faces. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order and start with the roll call.
Mayor Bagley?
Here.
Council members Christensen? Here. Finley? Martin? Here. Peck? Rodriguez? Here. Waters? Mayor Bagley, we have a quorum.
All right, let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, quick reminder to the public, if your name is not on, tonight's a regular session, so your name needs to be on this list for first call public invited to be heard. If you still want to talk, that's okay, but you got to wait till the end of the meeting. Everybody has 3 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off. So, Mr. Olson, I see your name on the list, but I'll be watching. I'll be. Yes. All right, so let's go ahead. City Manager, do you have a report?
No report, Mayor, Council.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and go on to the least controversial of all the things I ever do, which is proclamations. And yeah. Oh, do we have minutes? Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to approve the September 25th, 2018 minutes?
So moved.
All right. Do we have a second? Second. All right. Let's vote. That should pass unanimously. It passed unanimously. All right, let's move on to proclamations. If we could have Kim Hurd, the Levi Project Coordinator, and Jackie List of Safe Shelter of St. Vrain Valley to come down. Thank you for coming, ladies. And so tonight we have a proclamation designating October 2018 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Longmont. So let me go ahead and read this, and we'll make it official, and then you can say a few words, including, I'm sure, the event that you've got scheduled for later on this week, or this month. All right. So, whereas anyone can be a victim of domestic violence regardless of age, sex, ability, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, or religion, and whereas, according to nomore.org, 1 in 3 teenagers, 1 in every 4 women, and 1 in every 9 men will experience domestic violence during their lifetime. And whereas children exposed to domestic violence are believed to be abused and neglected at a rate higher than the national average, and whereas domestic violence costs the nation billions of dollars annually in medical expenses, police and court costs, shelter funding, foster care, sick leave, absenteeism, and loss of productivity, and whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity for residents to learn more about preventing domestic violence and to show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy, services, and assistance to victims, and whereas only a coordinated community effort will put a stop to this heinous crime. Now, therefore, I, Brian J. Bagley, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me, and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim October 2018 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Longmont, and I invite all citizens in the community to work together to eliminate domestic violence from our community. Signed, the Mayor and the City Clerk. So, thank you very much for coming tonight and proposing this proclamation. Would you like to say a few words?
Can you tell?
Yes, get that. If you could get that microphone right up there.
Okay, is that
Thank
good?
you. Yep.
Okay. Mayor Bagley, members of council, thank you very much for this proclamation. On behalf of the board, staff, volunteers, and program participants of Safe Shelter of St. Vrain Valley, I want to thank you for proclaiming October as DV Awareness Month, and in doing so, proclaiming your support for the right of every individual to live a life free of intimidation, exploitation, and abuse. October provides an opportunity for Longmont citizens to come together in shining a light on relationship abuse, in contemplating the impact that this violence epidemic has on our community, and in looking for solutions to end this devastating form of violence. Your proclamation shines light on a dynamic that thrives in darkness and silence. And with these words, you also break the silence, make space for survivors to find their voices, speak their truth to power, and find a path to safety. From all who do this work and all who are served by this work, we want to thank you. And I want to recognize some of our advocates
Hello, advocates.
who work so very hard. And with your prompting, I also want to invite everyone to come September 26th to Saddleback Golf Club to join us in honoring our past and presenting our future. Thank you so much.
It's a fundraiser as well,
It is
correct?
a fundraiser,
So
yeah.
it's important that you get good community participation in order to
is.
fund and assist this type of endeavor, correct?
Okay, that's correct. Thank
Or
you.
just making sure that's clear. Can we get our picture with you?
Yeah.
All right, great.
wanna say
And would you like to also invite your people?
Yep,
Great. If council would feel comfortable joining me, I would appreciate that. Got to get my proclamation batting average up, so let's do another one. All right. I don't know if Joni here is here. And by the way, there was a third one that we were going to do this. Got it. Okay. All right. Just making sure that I know that they thought it fell through the cracks, but they moved it. Okay, good. All right. So this here is a proclamation designating the month of October 2018 as Community Planning Month in Longmont, Colorado. There's nobody better to accept this than our best planner ever, Joni Marsh. So whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, and rural areas, and whereas community planning can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories, and whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of local planners and the members of planning commissions who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Longmont, and whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community and regional planners of the city of Longmont, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, I, Brian J. Bagley, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me, and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim October 2018 as Community Planning Month in the City of Longmont, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. Signed, the Mayor, and attested by the City Clerk. So, Ms. March, would you like to say something? Turn on your mic.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, I would if I can turn my mic on, right? So I think that it's appropriate that this year the National American Planning Association's theme for Community Planning Month is housing as community infrastructure. So we as a community have spent a lot of time in the past year and more than that talking about housing and how housing is really a part of our community fabric. And it really underscores a critical role that planning plays in not just building communities, but providing equitable housing. So I think it's a theme that hits right at home with where we're at in our current community conversation. As you all know, typically we do host a couple of events and try to put some things together so that the community can come and celebrate Planning Month with us. They don't know it, but they really do want to come do this sometimes. So the first event that we're going to be hosting with Boulder County planning staff is going to be a bike ride next Friday, October 19th. And there are going to be two options. One's a 12-mile ride and one's a 17-mile ride. They're not as daunting as they sound, and the map is online on the planning site, and I'd be happy to forward that to you. And it starts and ends at the St. Vrain Memorial Building. So that's something we've put together with Boulder County to really take a look at everything from urban planning to open space to trails to historic preservation. So we're going to do that as a combined staff group. The second item that we have starting next Thursday night is our first Citizens Planning Academy. So this is something I've actually been wanting to do since 2001. So I'm very excited about it, and if it's not for all the help my staff gave me in putting this together, we wouldn't be able to do it. But we're offering a 4-week course every Thursday night for 2.5 hours for citizens who are interested in learning about planning. Maybe folks who don't know what the comprehensive plan is, maybe they do. Maybe they don't know how to effectively participate in our planning processes. So we're going to provide a 4-week course, also with opportunities for speakers, opportunities for them to collaborate on projects and do some case study projects, and also give them a chance to participate in our Main Street plan that has been kicking off on Wednesday, November 7th. We're going to have a meeting, so they're all invited to participate in that. And we were fortunate enough to think, well, we'll limit this to 15 because we know that there's a lot to cover, should be a small group, and we actually got an enthusiastic 41 applications. So that was a little daunting, but we've figured out how to move forward with the current class, and then we're also going to do one again at the first of the year, and have contacted those folks who are willing to do that. So we're pretty excited about that. And at some point, I know I had a couple council members ask if they could participate, and I think we'll try to figure out how to do a version of that for council members and board members as well. With that, thank you very much for the proclamation.
Thank you. Would you like a picture? No, they're all coming. So that was, come on down. All right, let's go, council. All right, let's go ahead and move on to first call public invited to be heard. We've got a small but vibrant list. Dan Olson. And Mr. Olson, if you and the others could please state your name and address and take your 3 minutes, that'd be great.
Hi, my name's Dan Olson. I live at 1674 Brown Court in the city of Longmont. I'm here tonight as a member of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for the city, for your city council, and tonight I'm officially representing the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We just passed a resolution last night at our normal meeting, and I'd like to read or paraphrase it for you, and I'll give a copy, the official copy, to the city clerk for minutes. So we met and discussed, in particular, resolution ballot issue 3C, because it is part of our purview, since there is recreation and golf listed in ballot issue 3C. So, a resolution of the Longmont Parks and Recreation Advisory Board encouraging Longmont citizens to vote yes on ballot issue 3C to issue bonds for recreation and golf facility improvements on November 6, 2018. City recreation and golf facilities provide vital programs such as lifelong learning, health, and well-being services to the community. Now, these city facilities are in need of upkeep, improvement, and repair in order to maintain this community's investment in these systems. The 2018-2022 Capital Improvement Program included plans to issue bonds during 2019 to finance these infrastructure repair and rehabilitation projects with the debt service on the bonds being paid from the Public Improvement Fund, with the funding capacity freed up from existing bonds that will be paid off in May of 2019. And while no new tax is required, voter approval is necessary to issue the $6 million or $6.7 million of proposed bonds. The investment in the city infrastructure is critical to preserving assets and providing high-quality services to the community. Therefore, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board of the City of Longmont, Colorado, resolves, number 1, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board supports ballot issue 3C. Number 2, furthermore, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board recommends Longmont citizens fully inform themselves about ballot issue 3C before voting. And most importantly, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board urges Longmont citizens to vote yes on ballot issue 3C in order to ensure the continued rehabilitation and improvement of recreation and golf facilities. And I'll give this resolution signed by our board chair to the clerk. Are there questions? Great, thanks for your attention.
Thank you. And I will let you keep going even if you hit the 3-minute mark, because technically that wasn't a public invited to be heard. That was one of our advisory board reports. So thank you. No, I mean, not saying you were
direction
wrong.
To come here now and do it.
Hey, you did it.
I
Thank
delivered.
you. Thank you. Even better if all reports were 3 minutes. That'd be awesome. All right. Suzanne Webble.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, I'm Suzanne Webble. I've lived at 5735 Prospect Road, Longmont, since 1996, when Vance Brand was still a small recreational airport. That's 4 miles southwest of the airport and directly under the flight path of almost every landing and departing aircraft. I am implacably against any expansion of the airport, whether it be adding a restaurant, adding new hangars, adding a control tower, or lengthening the runway. I am especially against letting commercial jets of any kind land here. We are already excruciatingly aware of every small jet that arrives or departs, and I have called in noise complaints about many of them. I've heard talk about treating the airport as a utility. It is not. A utility provides services that are used by everyone. This airport provides services that are used by only a few at the expense of everyone else. The juggernaut, otherwise known as the Airport Advisory Board, is tone deaf when it comes to citizen participation, transparency, objectivity, and financial honesty. They have shown that they can't even force their own biggest tenant, Mile High Skydiving, to pay its fair share of the rent. And you can bet that the backers of the proposed runway expansion will be making all sorts of wild promises to their base, translated into all sorts of sweetheart deals to attract more and more and more commercial traffic that will do nothing but line their own pockets and aggravate the rest of us. Longmont businesses don't need a jetport, and the expanded airport won't bring more jobs. I urge council not to fall for this scam. Take back control of your own airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webble. I can't read the name here. I'm not sure. Kimberly Gibbs. Not sure if I'm saying that right.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley, members of council. Kim Gibbs, 7468 Mount Sherman Road in Gun Barrel. Over the past couple of weeks, you've heard from several concerned citizens, both City of Longmont residents and those of us in the county who are affected by the airport. And I just want to summarize some of the things that you've heard, the concerns that have been raised. So one was Mile High Skydiving, the drop zone area. I think you've recently learned that they're paying just a very tiny fraction of the amount that that you had thought that they would be paying this year, and there have been some concerns about that. My question there is, why wasn't council notified about these deficiencies long before now, and why did it take council members asking questions in order to bring this to the floor? Last week, I asked you to adjust the annual budget to reflect the cost of installing noise monitors throughout the community. And it seems that everyone that I talked to about that, residents, city council members, are generally in agreement that that's a very reasonable request. Third, we shared concerns about expanding the airport and extending the runway. A lot of people are very concerned about that and the continuing or the growing impact of having the jets come in, and the fact that there are no regulations currently in place to reduce aviation noise. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that there are no regulations that limit the community noise impact from aviation. So we believe that needs to change. I do want to acknowledge that in response to a suggestion that I made a while back about limiting Mile High's access to the drop zone via their lease, one council member did follow up and ask questions about that. I had provided a copy of the Truckee Tahoe lease, which limits their season. The airport manager replied that ANCA, that 1990 Airport Noise and Capacity Act, prevents you from doing that. And so I want to really be on the record right now in stating that that is inaccurate. It's a false statement. ANCA applies only to stage 2 and stage 3 jets. And so we're going to continue this education until everyone understands that ANCA does not apply to small propeller-driven aircraft, nor does it apply to leasing land. So we can move on to the next, reason why you can't adopt it, but it's not going to be ANCA, because everyone who knows anything about aviation law understands that ANCA doesn't apply to small propeller-driven aircraft. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Jeffrey Thompson. It actually says Jeff. Not sure if it's Jeffrey, but just Jeff Thompson.
Jeff Thompson, 1616 Sumner Street. The council should take item 8C off the agenda, the consent agenda, and not put it back on the agenda and even vote on first reading until the council properly educates itself about the city's water supply and its needs. Last week, Dale Rademacher said that our current water supply was insufficient to meet build-out projections, and that the supply we would need to meet build-out projections was 30 to 40,000 acre-foot range. He said he didn't really, have those numbers on the top of his head, which everybody on the city council should have those numbers on the top of their head. And Dale said it definitely was not 22,000 acre feet. Okay, if you look on my handout, go to the January 27th, 2015 City Council meeting video. I tell you what time that is. And Dale told the City Council that our per capita use of water was 170 gallons per person per day and decreasing. So anybody who can multiply and divide can just do the math. Our build-out projection, we're not supposed to call it build-out anymore, but the city under this Envision Longmont isn't expecting to have a population of more than 116,000 people. So just do the math, and that comes out to 22,000 acre feet. And Dale Rademacher stood here last week and told you that was definitely wrong, and told you it was definitely in the 30 to 40,000 acre feet. And I submit to you that Dale Rademacher was, in fact, lying about that. He certainly wasn't being candid and just telling you, just crunch the numbers and you get that. There's no way around that. He said something ridiculous having to do with the yield of the Windy Gap Firming Project and a potential call on the Colorado River Compact. He said that a call would not occur during the high flow months. A call would be based on a 10-year average, And at this point, it's inevitable. Just Google call on Colorado River compact, and you'll see that all the responsible water managers are talking about that. And it's inevitable. And once it happens, it's going to be permanent. But even if there never is a call on the Colorado River compact, the other thing that needs to be addressed is this. The environmental impact statement for the Windy Gap Firming Project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Appreciate it.
Would you please address
That's
these
it.
things
You're
and
done.
stop lying to us about
You're
it?
done. You're out of order. Please have a seat. All right, Patty Sy.
Look how tall this is. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna wing it with no notes.
Oh,
Is it
let's
on?
wing it with the microphone. There you go.
Okay, is it
All
on?
right.
Okay. All right, well, I'm from Chicago. My background's real estate, construction. I love history and architecture. Most people have heard of the Chicago fire, but not many have heard of the Longmont fire. In 1910, the town burnt down. Some of the buildings survived, but there are cornerstones throughout town that say 1893 and whatever. So, but I'd like to address the density of the construction happening all around town. Something has to give. The whole panel loves to say sustainable. It's not sustainable. The choice of materials is not sustainable. The setback lines, 5 feet from my border is his border, and we could shake hands out our windows. That's not sustainable. The properties will lose value. Maybe not quickly, but soon they will start losing value. Those materials that they're choosing will all go bad in 15 to 20 years, except for the 50-year roofs that they're putting on all of them. And I love history. I love architecture. None of them have any flavor of architecture. None of them. Okay, so there's hook and ladder because of the fires back in Chicago. They have hook and ladders. That's the symbol for the firemen. Because they used to grab onto the building with a hook and pull it down and just let it burn. Because once they start burning, that's all you could do. And you can't make them this close and make them all made out of paper. That's just, it's asking for disaster. And it looks really good at 9th and Hover. They're doing these big houses, big dollars. It looks good. They're too close, but hey, it's looking really good. Then they did this behemoth in the center. Behemoth. It's more than 35 feet, but they started this more than 2 years ago. I know the height limits have changed. But there's no firewall. In between the first floor and the second floor, there's no firewall. In between my unit and the next unit, there's no firewall. Either the materials should change and you could consider masonry, either in the gangways in between these buildings, it should be masonry so they don't burn each other, or spread them out because it's not sustainable. The rate of construction is not sustainable. Where is the water coming from? Are we keeping up with the schools? Do we need more council members? Are all these people being represented? Serious.
Less council, preferably.
We need more police officers. We need more firefighters. Are they keeping up? I don't think so. And where is this water coming from for all this construction? And it is starting to get cold, so I can't stop until I mention the homeless. We have to do something. I'm excited they're doing something at Kmart, but we should be doing something. The next big thing that comes available, whether it's a school, a factory, I don't know what it'll be, but we should grab it up and do something so the homeless could take a shower and so they could do their laundry. And as they leave, they're fresh, they're clean, they're wearing clean stuff. They could grab a jacket or maybe a pair of shoes. And then a haircut if necessary.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. All right. That's it for, and I just, before we move on, just, Dale, I'm sorry. You know, a lot of times, according to the Constitution of the United States, anybody gets 3 minutes so long as you're not disrupting the meeting to say whatever you want. But after the 3 minutes, you know, your liberties, as far as as far as freedom of speech at that podium ends. And just, I think it needs to be noted, you have a long, distinguished history of honorable and honest service with this community and this council. I think I speak for everybody. We appreciate you, and hopefully you will not be dissuaded by certain members of the public's comments. So, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the consent agenda.
Mayor Bagley, item 8A is ordinance 2018-41, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2018. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for October 23rd. Item 8B are two budget mill levy ordinances. The first is ordinance 2018-42, a bill for an ordinance fixing and levying taxes upon the real and personal property within the city of Longmont for the year 2018 to pay budgeted city expenses for the 2019 fiscal year. Public hearing, second reading scheduled for October 23rd. The second is ordinance 2018-43, a bill for an ordinance fixing and levying taxes upon the real and personal property within the Longmont Downtown Development District for the year 2018 to pay budgeted expenses of the Longmont Downtown Development Authority for the 2019 fiscal year. Public hearing, second reading scheduled for October 23rd. Item 8C is ordinance 2018-44, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 1404 of the Longmont Municipal Code to extend the surcharge on water fees for payment of Windy Gap costs. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for October 23rd. Item 8D is Resolution 2018-99, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and town of Berthoud, the city and county of Broomfield, the town of Erie, the city of Fort Lupton, city of Fort Morgan, town of Hudson, Little Thompson Water District, Central Weld County Water District, the city of Louisville, Morgan County Quality Water District, Platte River Power Authority, Superior Metropolitan Water District, Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association Incorporated, and the Southern Water Supply Project Water Activity Enterprise of the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District for allotment contracts for capacity in the Southern Water Supply Project. Item 8E is Resolution 2018-100, authorizing agreements between the city and Newbie Farms LLC for the purchase of real property for open space purposes. Item 8F is Resolution 2018-101, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the state of Colorado, Department of Public Safety, Division of Homeland Security, and Emergency Management for an emergency management performance grant. Item 8G is Resolution 2018-102, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city, the county of Boulder, and the city of Boulder for the Bureau of Justice Edwin Bryan Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. Item 8H is our Resolution 2018-103, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Bureau of Justice Assistance Grant from the Department of Justice for grant funding for the Comprehensive Opioid Abuse Site-Based Program. Item 8I is Resolution 2018-104, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Department of the Navy for cooperation with civil law enforcement officials. Item 8J is approval of two capital improvement program amendments. Staff doesn't have a need to pull any of these items.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I would like to remove item 8C from the consent agenda, and I'd also like to let it be noted that there was a Windy Gap board meeting this morning, and that I chose at that time to pull 8C from the consent agenda because I had questions that I thought that the city should know about things that happened in that meeting, and I just thought this was a good time to bring them forward. So 8C, please.
Would you like to make a motion? Want to pass the consent agenda minus 8C?
Sure, I'll do that. If nobody else has anything, am I the only one on the list?
Looks like you're the only one.
Then I move the consent agenda minus 8C.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and vote. And that passes unanimously. Well played, Councilmember Martin. Well played. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our ordinances on second reading and public hearings. First is 9A, Ordinance 2018-38, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport, hangar parcel H-33C, also known as the premises, to Axis Aero LLC, also known as the tenant. Are there any questions or debate from council pertaining to this? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll let David get here. Could you tell me what business Axis Aero is in?
Mayor, Council, Dave Slater, Airport Manager. It's just a company, it's not particularly an aviation business. He owns an aircraft and
Oh, okay.
He's just storing, it's his personal / business aircraft, but it's not a aviation business that they're
Oh,
conducting
okay.
business
So
out
they're
of
not
here.
doing business there, they just have
They're
a
just
hangar
storing.
for their business.
I apologize.
Yeah. No, that's
Mayor
okay.
Bagley, Mayor Pro Tem Christensen, that's correct.
Yeah.
They're just storing the aircraft there.
Okay, thank you.
Is it a similar situation with 9B as well? Meaning
Uh,
it's not a business, it's a private
That's correct.
lease?
Both of
Okay.
those are actually private storage hangars that their lease expires, and
Okay.
we're just renewing.
Just making sure that's clear. All right, great. Seeing no one else in the queue, I'd like to open the public hearing on ordinance 2018-38. Is there anyone present who has a question, comment, or concern? All right, seeing none, I'd like to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion, please? Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I move passage of ordinance 2018-38.
Do we have a second? Great, let's vote. And that passes unanimously. Next is ordinance, or item 9B, ordinance 2018-39, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the following parcels of real property at the Vance Brand Municipal Airport: H-44C to the Francis B. Small Living Trust and hangar parcel H-44E to Scott Chu. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, I'd like to open the public hearing on ordinance 2018-39. Seeing no one, I'd like to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion, please? I move ordinance 2018-39. It's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Gotta move fast. All right, that passes unanimously. Finally, we've got ordinance 2018-40, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of an electrical easement in the Wallace Edition fourth filing final plat, generally located within the southwest quarter of Section 15, Township 2 North, Range 69 West of the 6th Principal Meridian, City of Longmont, County of Boulder, State of Colorado. Are there any questions from staff? Is there a report from staff? No? All right, is there anyone here from the public? Well, I'm actually open for public hearing. Is there anyone here in the public who would like to ask or state or anything? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I move passage of ordinance 2018-40.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. All right, that passes unanimously. I'd like to turn the time over to Councilmember Martin to raise any questions. I'm sorry, that passes unanimously. And I'd like to turn the time over to Councilmember Martin to get her questions and comments resolved pertaining to ordinance 2018-44.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley, and glad to see you, Mr. Houston. Come on up. So first of all, this morning, the board discussed several legal delays that are preventing the actual construction phase of the Windy Gap project from beginning. And I would like you, if you could, to just enumerate those and explain in each case what the issue is.
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Martin, thank you for that opportunity. Ken Houston, Water Resources Manager with Public Works and Natural Resources. And the actual design of the project is nearing completion, so in a normal situation, we'd be moving forward with bidding of the project. At this time, there are two legal issues that are actually in the courts ongoing. The first is to a filing that is in the water court. As part of the construction of this project, there have been issues about exactly what does the Windy Gap water right allow us to do. How can that be used? One question, of course, is does the current Windy Gap decree allow us to store Windy Gap water in Chimney Hollow Reservoir if it is constructed? And obviously we want to answer that question before we would spend the money to do the project. So about a year ago, the Northern District filed in water court for, I'll call it a change case. It really isn't a change case because we're not changing the water right. But we're getting a determination from the water court that the project as proposed is within the context of the project. It also will clarify some of the conditions of the decrees, and it also incorporates all of the agreements that, such as the 1040, a reissued 1041 permit, a cooperative, we call it learning by doing agreement with the West Slope, and other agreements that have been made to move the project forward. So the water court filing, that's actually progressing very well. All the substantive objectors have been stipulated out. There's only one objector left in that case, and that's—
Who is that?
It's called the Schmuck Family Trust, and they own the property immediately downstream of the dam. And as part of the connectivity channel construction, they want access to more of the river. So that's really not a water rights issue, but they've filed a statement of opposition in a water rights case so they can move their other objective forward. And so that hopefully will be settled separately. The other, and probably a bigger and more time-consuming issue, is a federal lawsuit that was filed just a little bit over a year ago. I think it was September of last year, by the DU Law School, students in the DU Law School, on behalf of a couple of project opponents who are challenging the issuance of the both the Bureau Reclamation permit for the construction of the facilities to take water out of the CBT system, as well as the Army 404 permit, which will allow construction of the dam. They're a challenge through the federal permitting process. Those usually take about 3 years to resolve. Hopefully sooner, but certainly could easily take that long. And so we won't be actually doing the construction. We can get a bid, we can get ready to go, but we actually wouldn't do that construction until that case is through. They've raised a number of what I would term as, standard objections, limiting the scope of the purpose and needs, those type of issues, and that's just, that litigation is really just starting. It takes a little while to get it kind of in the queue at the federal level. In fact, they're still haven't even ruled on who all the parties in the case are. So hopefully that we'll see movement on that case. So that's the two court cases that probably mean, absent those, we'd be talking bidding it out this winter, hopefully starting construction next summer. With both those cases sitting out there still, we're probably we could easily be a couple years out yet.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess you said a couple of years. The Schmuck family could be settled easily with, in worst case, an expenditure of a few $100,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. There has been an appraisal of the interest they're asserting, and that's, yeah, in the few $100,000 range, about $300,000 or $400,000. So that's, dollar-wise, that's not a big issue. Probably the biggest issue is the federal case and getting that through.
Good. Okay. So we think that it's probably, your best estimate is 2 years before being able to proceed, which would be taking it to bid. Is there some event in the course of that University of Denver lawsuit where you would be able to say, all right, it's going to be settled one way or the other at this point, within 6 months I can now take the project to bid, or do you have to wait for a final settlement?
We would not have to wait for a final settlement. I think as the case is progressing, we should get a good feel, how the rulings will be going. Probably the most significant point is when the case management order comes out, that hopefully will give us a better schedule on the case. But yeah, we would probably want to go ahead. The bidding process is, for a large project of that sort, is easily 6 months long, between letting the bid and reviewing them and coming up with a contract. So we probably would want to see that starting to move forward before the end of that.
Okay, so then it sounds like you're saying the most probable time frame for breaking ground, assuming that the lawsuit is settled favorably to the Windy Gap group, is probably 3 years to groundbreaking.
I believe that's a good estimate, yes.
Okay, thank you. And is that related to the amount of time that you're asking to extend the surcharge?
That is correct. We did ask for a 3-year surcharge for 2 reasons. The primary reason being that that's where we do feel that's about how long it'll take to get the project to design. It also is, we believe, with the current construction cost estimates we have a valid estimate that allows us to go forward with that amount at this time, and that really until it's bid and we get an actual contractor bid number, that's really when we'll be able to look at the final number that this Windy Gap surcharge should be, and it should be based upon construction cost, ultimately upon the as-built construction costs. So yeah, that we feel that gives us a valid number for the next 3 years.
Okay, so that's the end of the questions that I'm sure you expected that someone of us would ask you, and that you came here prepared to explain. And now I'm warning you that I'm blindsiding you, and you may not be able to answer these questions at all.
Come on, Ken, you can do this.
We'll try.
Come on.
Did you get to see this piece of paper that was handed out to the rest of us?
I'm sorry, I did not.
You
no.
did not, okay.
Valerie, I assume you're going to ask some questions based on this paper anyway?
No, I'm probably not.
Okay,
Actually,
all right.
I'm gonna ask some simpler questions, but anyway, first of all, can you relate the money that would be saved by the surcharge to the deltas in cost of putting the Windy Gap project off for 3 years, so that everybody can understand why this money is needed?
Yes, the Windy Gap surcharge is in place now because it's a project that's actually ongoing. We're having expenditures at this time. One of the things that's also important about the Windy Gap surcharge is by collecting it now on new development, any new development that occurs in the next 3 years will pay their fair share of that new water supply, just as will for the 30 years afterwards, as we pay off the bonds, that new future new development will do. The good thing about if it happens to be 3 years with a Windy Gap surcharge in place is that we'll continue to grow the fund, and we will keep that money in a cash reserve. We'll continue to grow that fund, which will help us be able to not have to borrow as much for the project. It'll really be money that we'll be able to put directly into the project. And I won't say I'm glad there's a lawsuit that's holding it up for 3 years, or that I'm glad it's being held up by 3 years, but the advantage of it being held up by 3 years is we'll have additional time to assemble what I'll say is the entire pot of money.
Okay, thank you. And then, because it was brought up in the public invited to be heard, we have a situation here where a few years ago we had the definition of build out and a fairly firm estimate. of the population and the water needs at build out. And then we've done a bunch of things. You know, we have acquired some land in open space. We have changed the land use code to change the density expected population. That we have changed our landscaping requirements around developments. So a lot of things have changed in our expectation for what the city is going to look like in 10 years. And to me, that indicates that we need to redo the model for what our water requirements will be when we attain our maximum population, which is also probably not necessarily 116,000 people anymore. It's probably some larger number, but we don't, well, I don't know what it is. You may, and you may have started the process of modeling. So I guess I have a three-part question. Have you started that process of remodeling? Do you have an answer yet? And if the answer is no, do you have a date by which you expect to have that answer that we can report to the people on that?
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Martin. Let me first go back with a little bit of the history. Kind of the numbers we're working off right now are from what we call our water demand evaluation, which was completed in 2012. So in the realm of planning, that's actually a fairly recent document, because when we did that, we looked at build out of the entire Longmont planning area, and it hasn't changed that much. There have been changes. So we recognize the need to take an even finer look and update those numbers before we ask council to kind of pull the trigger at the time we're ready to do construction and pay the larger amount. So we started an updating process of that water demand evaluation that we really started way back early summer, late last fall. We are well on the way. We're in completing that. There's really two major elements of that. One is the water supply side of the equation, which is the water rights, the yield, future yield of those water rights, and then there's the water demand side and how that's changed. So it is correct, especially north of 66, there's a lot of large areas up there that were changed from areas that would have been developed that are now Boulder County open space areas. So that will incrementally lower water demand in those areas. Unfortunately, that was where what was really the best water rights we would have gotten. It's under one of the more junior ditches, so it had a higher percentage of CBT water and Pleasant Valley Reservoir water, which is the most senior water right. So we'll lower the demand, but we'll also lower the supply because we now won't get those water rights that we would have gotten. So really you have to look at both sides of that equation. We've completely compiled all the information on the water rights that we will have it build out, or at least we're projecting to have it build out, and have turned that information over to our consultant that runs our water rights model. They're hoping to get that effort going here in October, and I would expect in the next month or two to have that. The other side of the equation, the water demand, and that's actually kind of interesting because we actually don't worry so much about the ultimate population, because so that we can look at a full build-out demand, we actually look at the land uses, and so we ascribe, for each land use what that is. Now, the land uses are very similar but slightly different in Envision Longmont as compared to the prior Longmont plan, Longmont Comprehensive Plan. And so we're able to go back, we're going back in and adjusting for the new Envision Longmont. So I'm not even going to try to say what the answer is going to be because we're still in the process of doing that. But the modeling is well underway on the demand side as well. So we're really doing our best, before the end of the year to have that, and it'll certainly be well before we come back to council and ask for, kind of pull the trigger on moving forward with that. And we'll have all these types of numbers that people are bantering around. We'll have a brand new study, and we'll be able to fully document and let everybody look at that information.
So it looks like you're talking about maybe a full demand side report in spring, which is a good 2 years in advance of needing to pull the trigger on Windy Gap.
Yes, we believe we'll be well in advance of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Ken, thank you for that explanation. I'm looking at your chart here.
Joan, can you just get up there? I know that.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm looking at your chart here, the meter size and the cost in 2018 for the different types of construction. Can you remind me what percentage of, for example, the 5/8 by 3/4, the very first one is 1,320. What percentage of that is the surcharge, and what is the normal rate for that water meter hookup? I'm curious as to what the percentage of that is actually the surcharge.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. I think I might let Dale or Barb might be a little more familiar with that.
Sorry, Dale.
Council and Council Member Peck. So your question is on the chart on the second page of the council com?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And the $1,320, that is the portion of the Windy Gap project, if you will, that is subscribed to that size of a meter. And so it's based on the water capacity of a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter, and the prorating, if you will, the entire Windy Gap project over all the water taps, or size of taps in the city. It's really no different than how we allocate the cost of the overall system. We use a similar methodology between the two. And so all that's doing is looking at the relative demand of a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter and subscribing to that, their pro rata share, if you will, of the Windy Gap project.
So my question was, if we did not have a surcharge, what would this size of a residential unit pay for that water tap? I'm curious about what is the difference.
So if there was no, this number is the entire Windy Gap surcharge.
So that's on
all you're
top
seeing, all
of
you're
the
seeing
water
here,
tap.
yes, all you're seeing here is the Windy Gap surcharge.
Okay.
They
So
pay
that's
zero on this chart if there was no surcharge. So, for example,
I assumed it was the whole cost, and that.
No, so the underlying system development fee is in the range of $5,000, $6,000. Oh, well,
Thank
having
you.
a more experienced person come and answer it. Oh, here's off the website. There you go.
So it's the water system development fee is around.
Dale, stay close.
It's going to be around $7,000 for a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter for a single family residential home, and then you're going to have the $1,300 for the
On
Windy
top
Gap
of it.
surcharge. Yes.
That's quite a chunk.
And the sewer system development fee is $4,200.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
Councilmember Martin, you have another comment?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I do have one question, which is, if we didn't pull the trigger on the Windy Gap project, what would happen to the surcharge money, and what other uses do we have coming down the pipe that would be good uses of that money and fair uses of that money for the households that paid the surcharge?
So that's a good question. And right now, the surcharge is going into the overall water construction fund. Correct, Barb? The surcharge? Water operating fund. So we would likely return to council and get your direction. one option would be to offset that to customers. It's going to be difficult to do, again, based on when somebody paid the fee versus when the decision was made not to go forward with the future project. Another alternative is I believe the city could retain that so long as they invest and continue to spend that in their overall water system and water supply system.
Could we use it for some of the other projects that we have, like the upcoming pump back system and raw water systems and things like that?
I believe, and again, I defer to legal on that, but I believe you could make a case that so long as you are investing those dollars back into your overall water system, anything that provides water, provides treatment, provides storage, would be an appropriate use of those types of funds. In other words, you couldn't take them and go build a library, but you would have to retain them in the water enterprise.
Okay. If there's no one else in the queue, I'd like to move passage of 8C.
Second. And Dale, I've got a question before we head off. It is going back to this. So one of the members of the public, one of our more animated members, is his average annual native flow at Windy Gap Dam accurate, that 482,926 acre feet, first of all? Does it look about right?
I'll let Ken answer that.
And don't worry about where I'm going. I'm not trying to trap you. I just want to make sure that number is correct.
That number's way higher
Than the average?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, what is the range? I mean, what is the average range? Not the average range. What is the range? In a dry year, what's the native flow? And in a wet year, what's the native flow? Because mathematically, using your average annual flow, regardless of what the number is, it's the wrong math.
Yeah.
At least I believe.
Mayor Bagley, really, there's two things you have to look at. One is it's really the range. A dry year, you're going to run about 50%, sometimes as low as 40% of a average to wet year.
And in those dry years, we do not get anything because it's a junior water right, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The average annual yield at full build out of the Windy Gap Diversion Project is 48,000 acre feet. And in a real wet year, the project can, by contract, can pump up to about 95,000 acre feet. And of course, in a dry year, it doesn't yield at all.
Okay. So in other words, the only way we get our water, if we need it in a dry year, it needs to be stored coming off a wet year.
That's
so
absolutely correct.
So in some years, it's correct. We will get nothing. But unless we have Windy Gap, there's nothing to store in the wet years. Okay? All right, great. All right, it's been moved. Nobody else in the queue and seconded. Let's go ahead and vote. And that passes unanimously. Okay. Look at that. General business, nothing. Final call, public invited to be heard. I don't see nobody. Ms. Gims, if you'd like to make another comment.
Yes, I would. Mayor Bagley, members of council. Kim Gibbs, 7468 Mount Sherman Road.
That is your time. Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. No, just kidding. Start again.
Again?
Yeah, you got your 3
thing?
minutes. The whole thing. You got it. No, just go.
Okay. So I just wanted to follow on with my earlier comments. I was talking about the Airport Noise and Capacity Act and how I disagreed with comments made by the airport manager. So I want to clarify there what I mean by that. So I'm saying that I disagree. I'm not accusing anyone of wrongdoing or trying to intentionally mislead you. I do believe, after having interacted with FAA officials for several years, I have seen firsthand what I would consider efforts by FAA officials to mislead. And what is commonly done is that they will tell the uneducated public, because aviation law is complex, they will tell them that ANCA prevents you from adopting any regulations. with the understanding that you're busy, people have busy lives, and you're not going to go read this federal legislation and do the really hours-long work that's necessary to really understand it. So what I'm saying is I disagree, and we're going to be here educating and trying to reach a common understanding with you, because I think there are many of us in the community who are absolutely dedicated toward making some good progress on this issue, okay? So I'm not accusing anyone of wrongdoing. And it's also an opportunity for you to educate me if I've gotten some of the facts wrong, okay? I think there's room for all of us to learn something there. And then I want to change subjects just a little bit and make a point on a different issue. I've been coming here for years. My address is a Longmont address, but I think I'm pretty clear with you each time I come here and I tell you that I'm a Gun Barrel resident. Last week at council, we heard from several members who were promoting the expansion and who claimed to be Longmont residents and even emphasized that point, even though they're not Longmont residents. So if they do that again, I'm going to make sure everyone in the room knows that they're misleading you. And I just want to make that point because I thought it was a little bit disingenuous for them to claim that they were Longmont residents. So we all need to be really truthful and honest about who we are and where we're coming from and why we have a stake in this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Webble, I believe.
Hi, Suzanne Webble, 5735 Prospect Road, Longmont, unincorporated Boulder County. I want to shift gears also and speak to you on behalf of the Boulder Area Trails Coalition, of which I'm the president. You may know us as BATCO.
I'm sorry, could you really get in there? I know the paper's doing this. They want to hear what you say.
Okay. President of the Boulder Area Trails Coalition. You may know us as BATCO. We produce a comprehensive trails and recreation map of Boulder County, and we advocate for open space and non-motorized trail development throughout the county. But I want to commend you on your acquisition of the Newbie Farms east of town. It's big, and it's a wonderful acquisition for many reasons. One of them is urban shaping, protecting Longmont from development that may be happening farther east. It's wonderful for preserving wildlife habitat and view sheds. It's wonderful for preserving agricultural properties and water rights. And from our point of view, it's also wonderful because it will provide the opportunity to consider an excellent trail system connecting Union Reservoir to the state park out by I-25. Although I do live west of town, I'm very familiar with this area east, and I look forward to council's support for trails there as well as throughout the community. So thank you for having bought that nice piece of open space.
It's not done yet, but we're on our way. Mr. Stewart?
Scott Stewart, 229 Grant Street, Mayor Bagley, members of council.
If you could really get in there and speak up, I know we want to hear.
Mayor Bagley,
yes,
members of council. Yeah, it's abundantly clear that the airport is a difficult subject. I've said in the past that the airport manager has an extremely difficult job. I just encourage you not to just take the path of least resistance because somebody's handing you a some kind of option with 95% funding or what have you. Do what's right for the city not only now but for the long run. We're married to the airport because of the decisions we made years ago. We don't unravel this thing just to continue to grow it for the sake of growth. Is not necessarily what's right for Longmont. Just take your time on this, because once you build it, you can't unbuild it, and that's pretty much proven. I don't think there's anybody in the room that's thinking that this thing's going away, but we need to manage it properly. I think the manager that you have here is overtaxed with what the job requirement is in order to really control it. And, you know, this is a difficult thing, so just pump the brakes a little bit and let's make sure we know what we're doing when we're doing it. There are ways of doing this safely without extending, you know, hard surface runways and doing jets if safety is the issue, but involve some of us in the community that are on the opposite side of it in the discussions. I think we're more than willing to do that. And like I believe Ms. Gibbs says, you know, educate us if you need to. But, and I think we all need to be educated on this. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Stewart. All right, seeing no one else, we will, all right, come on up. Don't want to miss you, Miss Sy.
I heard you're switching to something at the
Get it up there. I don't know
the
what
golf
it
course?
There he is. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
At the golf course, they're going to do a Verizon tower. And like I say, I'm in commercial real estate back from Illinois, and I know those make good money and all that great stuff. I find it hilarious that they're going to put a plastic tree out there, but besides it being plastic, will there be stipulations about the safety of this thing if it's 5G? Yes, I see you nodding. Oh, no. Will there be stipulations? Will there be a safety check after this thing is installed? Because I'm all for the income for the town. That sounds great. But has anybody checked into 5G? I mean, is it safe? Will somebody check that it is safe after it's installed? I'm just curious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else? I think there's only one more member of the public here. All right, we're good. We're going to go ahead and close the public invited to be heard. Thank you very much to everyone who participates in their local government. We really appreciate it. Let's go on to mayor and council comments. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Is that close enough?
Oh, yeah.
Harold, actually, this is for you. When we are further along in this airport expansion, are we going to have some public comments, public forums, so that people really do understand it? Actually, so that I totally understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see, there's preliminary conversations with members associated with the Airport Advisory Board and the community, but like with anything that we do, the community involvement model would be utilized through that process because it's important to do that kind of work. And that's what we do for all of our projects.
Is there a timeline as to when you expect that to be done?
No, I think this is preliminary conversations that we're seeing. I haven't been able to attend all the meetings, but we will definitely inform council as we're moving along.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just with the elections coming up, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that in Colorado you can register and vote on the same day. If you want to vote in person, you should be receiving a voter guide. You should have already received your blue book. It explains what kind of identification you need to register and vote. And I have just been informed that the VIA service for people who need mobility assistance getting around the city is perfectly fine with taking people to vote. That's you can schedule an appointment with VIA to go vote. You can go to 5th and Kaufman, and within 15 days before, is that right? They're open, so you can get registered. You can mark a ballot with either early voting or on election day. You can mark your ballot there. You can bring in your mail-in ballot and deposit it in yourself with your own hand there. And VIA is perfectly fine to assist you with that. So I want all our residents who need help with transportation to know that that should not prevent them from voting and being sure that their ballot is cast.
Thank you, Councilmember Martin. Valerie?
I just want to also say that this is a mail ballot election, so most people will get their ballot via mail. But if they do want to vote in person, there is also going to be a voter service polling center at Fire Station 5 on Alpine Street.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't see anybody else in the queue. I was just going to say thank you very much for, I remember back when we actually, a couple years ago, when we challenged staff and set the policy to start acquiring open space east of Longmont. I mean, in government terms, it happened at, you know, a very fast pace, and we went from properties that we always salivated over to actually acquiring them, and so, or at least almost acquiring them, and so just that's awesome. Just so for I mean, it might seem like just tonight was just that was a big deal, and I also am aware that yes, I read comments in the paper and talk to members of the public, and we get chastised for, don't you idiots know that by buying open space, you are making the affordability in Longmont, you know, you're making it harder and you're increasing the cost of, yes. But that's like saying, don't you guys know that if you eat too much dinner, there's not room for dessert? I mean, you can have both, you know, and so this council is taking action to make sure that, you know, we do something for affordable housing and also preserving the character and beauty of this great area. So hats off. Good job implementing that policy. You guys did a great job. Mayor Pro Tem?
Just to add to what the mayor said, keep in mind this is not wasted space. This is a great deal of this is agricultural land. Agriculture is Longmont's heritage. And more and more, it's very difficult and to be a farmer, and more people's children are choosing not to do that. However, there are a lot of young farmers who would like to do precisely that, and they can't afford land. So this is a way they can lease land and use it for agricultural purposes, and we can actually eat things that have been grown right here in Longmont instead of sending away to California and Florida, et cetera. So this is land that we've agreed is our commonwealth, and it's there to be preserved forever for the animals, for the people, and for the farmers.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And before we adjourn the meeting, Councilmember Rodriguez, say something. No? All right, great. I'm just giving you a hard time. I love Councilmember Rodriguez. He is a man of little words, but when he speaks, it's actually meaningful. So thank you. All right, City Manager.
I did want to touch on one thing. There's been a lot of conversations about cell phone towers, and when it comes to the structure, that is the arena that we can look at. But specifically, Section 332C, Section 7 of the Communications Act states that this statute also preempts local decisions premised directly or indirectly on the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions, assuming that the provider is in compliance with the Commission's RF rules. Basically, it states that the FCC has held that power in terms of regulating cell phone towers related to the health effects. And we are specifically preempted from looking at those when selecting locations. There's a load to this, but basically what it does is, in this conversation, the Telecommunications Act really is pretty specific in terms of what local governments can and can't do. And if you allow them in some locations, you have to allow them in others. And so that's the framework that we're working on. I just wanted to get that out. If council has questions, we can get that information to you. But it is highly regulated by the Federal Communications Commission.
And that comment might lead to us that comment might be misconstrued to mean, God, this is a danger, but there's nothing we can do about it. But the frequency wave, the radio waves that go off those towers, they disseminate very quickly, and they're not aimed at the ground. They're aimed parallel to the ground. And so,
correct, and all the health studies have been done by the FCC, and they've just basically said, this is our purview.
Right.
Not your cities.
Right, but I mean,
I'm not making a comment about
right.
anything. It's
yeah.
just,
So
where does the purview lie? It lies with the Federal Communications Commission.
I wouldn't go up there and live on that tower, but I think you're okay on the ground. All right. Seeing nothing else, Eugene? City Attorney?
No comments, Mayor.
Great. Let's get out of here. Let's go home. We're adjourned.